Our next speaker in this session about Africa, I guess, or in general, also about coffee, but is a very smart woman that I met with in my cafe after she contacted me, wondering if we could do something together. And I think she had read an in-flight magazine about me, a small article about my cafe, and she wanted to do some research. And Morten mentioned this research this morning. It's a research we're doing with Yara, Norwegian fertilizer company, where we're testing the impact of different applications of fertilizer and its impact on quality. And Morten and Ida is doing the sensory profiling on this research, and I'm basically doing nothing now. But Chrystel is in charge of this coffee program for Yara and has been doing a lot of work in other countries as well. So without further ado, Chrystel Monthean.
Thank you, Tim. So unfortunately, maybe it will be a bit boring for you because it's more technical a bit, but I think it's important for you to understand what are fertilizers. Also, I think the common point we have, you and us, who are an input provider, is the farmer. The farmers are your suppliers, they are our customers. So that's probably why also I reached out to Tim at some point, because how can we together work to improve practices, in that case of coffee. We're talking Africa now, but when we made our study 3-4 years ago about the coffee sector, more than 85% is smallholders in the world. So, of course, the definition of smallholder is different in Kenya than in Brazil, than in Colombia, than in India. Nevertheless, it's a lot of families, a lot of people, and most of them are poor. And us, as an input provider, of course, we have a commercial intention, but how, at the same time, if you look at the bigger picture, on the supply demand of coffee, the need, you want to secure your business, you want to have your raw material. How do we do to approach so many farmers to improve their practices? I'm not here to make promotion about Yara, but the point I want to say, oops, what did I do? Okay. The light, which one is the light?
Left and right. That's the part.
So, yeah, Yara is a Norwegian company. The point I want to raise here is the origin of this company is an invention and it's innovation. So unless you start thinking a bit innovative, you won't make it. And it started by 2 Norwegian people who found how to extract the nitrogen from the air to convert it into a fertilizer. And nitrogen is a key nutrient for the plant. I've heard someone talking between agrochemicals and fertilizers. It's very different worlds. Fertilizers is the food for the plants. Agrochemicals is the medicine for the plants. Yara is in the food for the plants. And then what we try to do is really understand what is the right food we should give to a plant, in that case the coffee, at the right stage to make the best quality, the best quantity, with as limited impact on the environment possible, and of course for the farmer profitability. That's in a way resumed in our statements, where we want to be leading provider in sustainable crop nutrition solutions, supporting farmer profitability through knowledge, quality, and productivity. So our target is really the farmer, though we don't necessarily sell directly to farmers because there's too many, but it's key for us that the farmer makes it. Now the coffee world. When I'm not a specialist in coffee, despite I'm married with a Colombian man. In fact, my story with coffee really started when I was previously based in Vietnam. I worked 6 years there. And at that time, frankly, Yara as a company, we were not looking at coffee because farmers are poor. So it's very difficult to sell fertilizers, which are a costly input to coffee farmers. We rather look at other crops. But then I had the opportunity to be part of a task force with many people from the industry and realizing that the way the coffee was grown in Vietnam was not sustainable, in particular from an environmental point of view. So I got involved a lot into coffee during my 6 years in Vietnam. And what has been impacting me beyond being a Yara employee is as being a mother. When I met a person, a farmer, she was a lady, and she knew that, she told me, I know I should buy Yara fertilizers for my farm, but this month I have to decide between paying the school fees or buying Yara fertilizers. And I felt, forget who is paying me, who gives me my salary. I thought this is unfair. This cannot be like this. She should be able, with her income from the farm, to pay the school for her kids. And I felt kind of as a missionary in a way, coming back to Norway. That's a bit more or less when I met with Tim, and I in a way contribute to have Yara to look at coffee on a global scale. Because if you look even from a business point of view, there's a business case. We have in fact to make a business case to justify putting efforts as a company onto coffee, which I will explain to you. So that's some figures that some industry players are saying. You might argue it's not correct, it's correct or incorrect, but roughly everybody agrees that the consumption per capita is growing globally. The world population is growing as well. So if you multiply one by the other, it gives you 200 million bags. That will be the estimated need. The question mark is who will produce those 200 million bags? And it's unclear, again, when it's so many smallholders. Previous speakers have said poor, old, who is going to produce this? Then we start looking at how it looks from a fertilizer point of view. Again, who uses fertilizers? And out of 10 million hectares of land producing coffee over the world, only 40% is fertilized. And if you look at the different columns, you have so let's not make a problem. Brazil, which is highly productive, from your point of view, maybe not the best quality, but they use fertilizers. We talked a lot about Africa. They don't use much fertilizers because they are poor, but because they are not available, or because they have doubts and they have been cheated in the past because it was not the right giving the return on their investment. So that's the situation. So Asia is in between, but totally is only 40% that is not fertilized at all. So we, from a pure business case point of view, keeping in mind that the world wants more coffee, that a big chunk of the acreage is not using any fertilizers, it's a motivation also from a business point of view to look into coffee. Many people talk about coffee, same with cocoa, as an orphan crop, in the sense from the scientific perspective, because there has been a lot of work done on variety and eventually disease, but nothing on plant physiology to understand what are really the nutrition needs of that crop at different stages. So you have to go back to research. So plant nutrition, what we mean by this, we mean applying the right nutrient at the right dose, at the right stage, and the right form, because fertilizer is a black box. Many people don't understand what it is. It has a bad reputation, unfortunately. But unfortunately as well, you need to use them at some point if you want to have productivity and if you want to have the raw material you need. Of course, you can now use the organic fertilizers, but at the end, it's bringing the same nutrients inside. So what is the impact of fertilizers? It has an impact on yield. It has an impact also on tree longevity. Even very old trees, if they are fed the right way, they can be productive. It has an impact also, you probably hear the years on and off, especially Brazil. We think if a tree is well fed, you will reduce the gap between on and off. It has an impact on soil fertility, on pH. If it's badly managed, it has environmental impact for sure. It has an impact on quality. That's something we are working on with Tim. It has an impact on health. Again, as for human beings, if you have a balanced diet, you are more resistant to disease. Then if you are more resistant to disease, you need less chemicals or agrochemicals. And it has an impact on environment. If you use the wrong fertilizers, if you use the wrong dose, and so on and so forth, it has an impact on carbon footprint, on water footprint, and other elements. So it's very complex, and that's what we want to tackle for the coffee crop. If we look at balanced nutrition in particular, at the end, the plant needs nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, calcium, manganese, sulfur. The question is how much and when. And there are different vehicles to bring those nutrients. You can bring them through synthetic fertilizers or through organic fertilizer. But at the end, the needs of the plant are those. The difficulty is to know when and what dosage and what stage. So, of course, there's a lot of people saying don't use synthetic fertilizers, and in fact, we would not need to use synthetic fertilizers if we would not be harvesting, if we would not be cutting the natural circle, because the fact that we are getting the berries or getting the fruits, whatever crop it is, we are breaking the natural cycle. So then you don't have enough organic matter coming back to the soil to feed back the tree. So the thinking and the logic behind it is you need at some point to compensate what you're taking off when harvesting the berries. And again, I don't want to enter in the polemic if it should be the organic way or the synthetic way, but the concept is the same. You bring, in any case, nutrients that then will be absorbed by the tree. Then the other difficulty is that, and if you're traveling at origin, what is very often used by fertilizers by farmers is only one element, is for example urea or DAP. But the difficulty of this science, because it's a science, is to know which element, but also if you have one element missing, even though all the rest is correct, you won't have the right harvest. In that case, you see, if the nitrogen is too low, the rest is perfect, according to the needs of the plant. The yield will only be 3 tons, as an example. It doesn't matter if it's coffee or else. Then you say, okay, I will put more, too much. And then the limiting factor is the other nutrients. So it's also understanding the balance between the different nutrients to be efficient. It's about being efficient. Coffee, the green arrows show what is positive to coffee. Nitrogen at flowering, potash has an impact on quality and on cup quality. So all those nutrients have a different impact on the coffee. But as I said earlier, even though we know our products, we have a general knowledge about coffee. When it comes to the different origins, each soil, each climate, each tree is different. So what we have embarked in, and that's why we had to make a business case, because this is cost for the company, is doing trials. So we have trials in different places with different objectives. Sometimes it's to look at the productivity, sometimes it's to look at the quality, sometimes it's to look at the carbon footprint, and so on and so forth. And this is about us building our knowledge on what are the true needs of that crop, so that we can really grow it a sustainable way. Soil fertility. I will go fast because the time is flying. In many countries, the soil on which the trees are grown is acidic. And the thinner the line is, even though when you do a soil analysis, which was mentioned, so the soil analysis will tell you you have all those nutrients in your soil, but if the pH is wrong, it won't be available for the roots. So it's important to look at the pH of the soil in addition to the nutrients that are in the soil. Otherwise, it's not a good investment for the farmer. The problem is that in many countries, as I said earlier, the only available fertilizer is a type of nitrogen which is acidifying the soil. And this is commonly known that the urea or ammonium sulfate form of nitrogen is acidifying the soil. Then as a farmer, you can correct the pH by adding calcium carbonate, but it's an extra cost. So though urea and ammonium sulfate are cheaper type of fertilizers, it has an impact on the pH, which in turn doesn't make all the nutrients available for the plant, and then you don't get your return on investment. So it's not all about having the cheapest fertilizers always, because you have to look it on the bigger picture. I will split this one. Then about productivity, because we talked about productivity, and unfortunately, I think that's the problem, the big problem for the farmers. The productivity is so low, their income are low, and then it's the circle of poverty. So how can we help the farmers to be more productive? Of course, quality is one element, but it's not always the main focus is getting income. So it's about managing the money. So those are examples. That's when I was in Vietnam, the gray column is what was the traditional practice, the green is what was Yara recommendation. And you can see the point is to show that in that case, Vietnam is over-fertilizing. So we recommended to use less, but importantly, we tell them, add those micronutrients, add those nutrients that will not help, your tree will not be able to give the full potential it has. So, and you see it then in terms of yield. When you use the traditional practice, this is Robusta, 3.9 tons per hectare, it's increased by to 4.4. This is 71 demo plots of Robusta we have in Vietnam during 4 years. And then you see the profits. So when the farmers start to get the basic better, then he starts to look at more details. We have another, and the point of coffee, because you were talking to be consistent with the farmers, it's a tree. So for a tree, it takes a lot of time before you start seeing the results, because you have the trunk that makes a buffer between what you apply to the roots and what you see as an harvest. And we have those again still in Vietnam, still until now, 2015. If you look year on year, you consistently increase the yield. But you really have to think long term with a tree, and any tree, it's not only coffee. But again, it works economically for the farmer. This is not scientifically correct, but it's an example from Colombia, one farm we have, and we are doing the same. We are demonstrating in Colombia that you can use less fertilizers and still achieve better yield. You see, this is so in green coffee, the farmer practice, the Yara practice. So we increase the yield by 16%. The cost, of course, if you apply less, the cost per hectare is less, and then the profitability is increased. So again, it's about being efficient, and to be efficient, you have to go back to science. And fertilizers, nutrition is science, and that's why we embark into all those trials, because there's a gap in knowledge on coffee. Then if you look at the quality, which is what you are most interested in, also fertilizers have an impact, but we are really at early stage in understanding what's the link between fertilizers and crop quality. As I said earlier, potash, this chemical symbol is K. Potash is known as having an impact on the crop quality. But then you have, depending on the amount of potash you bring, so you see here you have 0 potash. If you have 200 kilo of potash per hectare, here you have 400. And you see that too much potash doesn't help the crop quality. And then the other factor is the way you bring the potash to the plant, if it's potassium chloride or potassium nitrate or potassium sulfate, those are the different colors. It also has an impact on the cut quality. So that's what we are trying to understand better for the cut quality part of this coffee world, because of course it's interesting for us to know, but I think it's also interesting for you to know. Then what we also, those are some colleagues of ours who are working in Costa Rica, again the chloride content in the beans has an impact. And the highest level of chloride, the lowest the bean quality. And chloride can come from fertilizers, and usually from cheaper fertilizers. Potassium sulfate and potassium chloride is a very big difference in price as a raw material. Then nitrogen. Nitrogen is key to produce the chlorophyll. Is the engine of the plant, any type of plant. And very often what is available in Kenya, Uganda or Colombia is nitrogen. Not all the fertilizers are available, but putting too much nitrogen has an impact on the cut quality as well. And then those are some of the first results that we are having from Colombia with Tim. It looks like it's the first year, so you cannot conclude anything, but again, talking micronutrients, that a high content of calcium seems to be helping the cut quality, while a lower level of calcium seems to be more at a lower cut quality. Those are just questions. We are not answering here, but it's more to reflect to you on what we are working when it comes to fertilizers and your world, which is fine coffee. But why we are working first on productivity, probably because that's, again, many of the coffee farmers, they are not coffee farmers, they are farmers. And they have the banana, and they have pineapple, or they have black pepper. So we need to help them to become productive, to get incomes. And then, if possible, look at the specialty part of it. But if they cannot live from their farm, they will quit. So let's make sure that through productivity, that's where we can come in. We have no influence at all on what are the international coffee prices, so we cannot work on this, but we can certainly work on helping farmers to be more efficient. And then why we are working with the value chain, and that's a bit my job. And why we do that? Because as I said at the beginning, there's so many smallholders across the world. We've talked a lot about Africa, but it's the same elsewhere. And Yara, even though we have very good intentions, we cannot reach all those farmers alone. It's too much. And even though we have agronomists on the ground, so doing kind of what is the extension work that should be done by national authorities, we cannot reach them, and it's not efficient and it's costly. So we try also to work with the industry from the different segments, because there's a lot of money invested or spent, depending on how it's done, in training farmers. And the idea is to join forces together so that when there's a farmer training for one of those certification schemes, the fertilizer part is not forbidden. Because in most of the schemes, when you look at the fertilizer part or the soil fertility part, it's very often said, ask the national extensionist what should be done. But we know that the national extensionist, and was said earlier, they are left behind with their knowledge. And then, while at the same time fertilizers is the highest cost of production for the farmer. So we have to be sure it's used the efficient way, but the national agronomists in general, they are not up to date with the knowledge, so they cannot really give the right advice. So it's a bit a shame, and it was mentioned earlier, that it's the private sector that has to do kind of the work that should be done by the public. But again, if you look at the bigger picture, and we are all citizens of this world, we all want our coffee in the morning. So So, okay, the national countries, they don't do it, but let's start, and eventually they will join, because at the end, and it was mentioned earlier, it's a lot of incomes for origin countries, thanks to the coffee. So, it's a complex world. I had no clue when I was in Vietnam I would be talking to you today, but I think it's very interesting, and I think when I say at the beginning I joined, indeed I saw an article about Tim in their aircraft, and I thought, I went to your shop and I say, can we do something together? This was exactly this thinking, you know, it's two worlds meeting together. We are here, we are at the beginning, and you are here. Unless we talk together, we will not be able to solve this problem. So that's why I'm here today. It may seem a bit weird, but that's the reason why I'm here. And I think I'm finished.
Thank you very much. So we're going to do a very short transition. I would like to ask Klaus and Mia and Joanne to come up on stage again. But while they are coming up, we have 3 AirPods of coffee that says Yara over there. And that's actually the coffee from the quality trials that we are doing in Colombia. It's not the actual quality trial plot, but ever since we started working with Yara there, Elias, who is the farmer at Finca Tamana, has changed his fertilizer program for the whole farm. And in my opinion, it has taken actually longer than I thought, but the quality has gradually become better and better, although we haven't really changed anything else on the farm, like the processing is the same and so on. So you can taste that. That's Castile variety, roasted on the Icava roaster last week. So it's over there.